This is a summary of episode 41 of the Huberman Lab Podcast by Andrew Huberman, titled Effects of Fasting and Time Restricted Eating on Fat Loss and Health. And I'm going to try and keep this as straightforward as possible with no BS. So I'm just going to go straight into the key takeaways. And so the reason why sleep-related fasting is so crucial for improving and optimizing your health is because it is important for repair functions in the gut, brain, liver, and as well as improving the regulation of liver health, inflammation, decrease blood pressure, reduce oxidative stress, enhance your gut microbiome, and also just to promote a more clear and focused mind. The pillars of an ideal time-restricted feeding window is 1. Delay the first meal at least 1 hour after waking. And 2. Don't eat 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. And then 3, similar to how you should be treating your sleep schedule, just stick to a consistent eating schedule every single day. Or try to, at least. And overall, the best target feeding window is 8 hours. And this is because a shorter feeding window between 4 to 6 hours can result in overeating for most people because you are restricting yourself from eating for a longer period of time. Shortening the feeding window to less than 8 hours can increase stress hormones and pro-inflammatory hormones and decrease some sex hormones, which is not ideal, especially for young people that are in our maturing stages, such as myself. The best thing that you can do to get the benefits of fasting and time restricted eating is to just keep a consistent schedule that you can stick to in the context of your own social life. And then if you're new to intermittent fasting and time restricted eating, just try a simple 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. window where no calories are consumed before 12 p.m. and then after 8 p.m. And also allow yourself a transition period of at least 7 to 10 days where you shift your feeding window by 1 hour until you get to the desired schedule. This means that, say, if I wanted to start to shift the start of my feeding window to 12 p.m. and my normal time that I have been having breakfast is 8 p.m., I'll start by moving it to 9 a.m. first, and then to 10 a.m., and then to 11 a.m., and then to finally 12 p.m. And it's also important to consider that liquids like water, tea, and coffee, considering that's black coffee, will not break your morning fast. If you're approaching fasting and time restricted eating from a pure health standpoint, it would be best to keep feeding to the middle of the day, that is 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, for some people, this can be difficult to sustain based on your social life. And if you're approaching fasting and time restricted eating to enhance muscle growth, consume protein in the early day as it promotes hypertrophy and or muscle maintenance. So ideally before 10 a.m., but you still want to follow this rule of fasting for the first hour upon waking. And if you're an endurance-based athlete or someone who is focused on endurance-based training, time restricted eating can lead to a significant decrease in free testosterone. And I know that doesn't sound very ideal to most people, but this shouldn't be a concern unless you already have a low testosterone baseline. And studies in athletes have also shown a significant reduction in cortisol as a result of time restricted eating. So it kind of sounds confusing, but it goes hand in hand with your testosterone levels because cortisol is an inhibitor of testosterone. So for some people, it might raise your testosterone levels, and for some people, it might decrease your testosterone levels. So it really just depends on your already existing hormone levels and health. And now, based on what Andrew Huberman talks about in his podcast, some effects that time restricted eating has on fertility is that reducing food intake or food calories too much can actually have a negative effect on the ovulation cycle in women and the sperm count in men. And this is because signals in the brain are looking for a good reproductive conditions without stress. And then time restricted feeding can also help with weight loss and fat loss because obviously you are giving yourself less time throughout the day to eat food. So what this means is that if you stay consistent with intermittent fasting for several months, provided that the food that you eat is healthy and you are eating the right amount of calories for your fitness goals, like you will lose weight. And doing intermittent fasting whilst eating in a caloric deficit, like that's a good way to ensure that the weight you lose is from body fat. And then this next note might sound crazy, but intermittent fasting actually helps relieve the stress and brain power that comes from deciding when to eat, because if you consistently follow your eating window, you'll know what times of the day that you should be eating. Because believe it or not, like having those moments of indecisiveness can have some negative effects on your mental focus and clarity, because it's just extra thoughts that can cloud your mind and cause distractions, which I feel like I can somewhat vouch for, because I am a massive overthinker. And I feel like just having the schedule that you can aim to follow every day, that you can fall back on when you find yourself overeating and gorging yourself with food, like it just makes your life just feel so much more organized. And then lastly, if you're feeling weak during your fast, putting some salt in your water can have a stabilizing effect on your blood glucose and give you a boost of energy. And something that I have been doing, especially with wrestling season and having to maintain or cut weight just so I can make my weight class, is that I've been drinking salt-based electrolytes. Um, some good brands is Santa Cruz Paleo, Element, and Relight. Like those are all fantastic brands. I would stay away from things like Liquid IV and Gatorade, because those are all just processed sugars and artificial dyes, and they don't even have that much electrolytes in them. It's all just sugar. And so these are all my key takeaways from this podcast episode and what I found important as it's relevant in my life. So obviously there are still some stuff that I left out. So if you want all the information that Huberman talks about, I suggest to watch the actual podcast. And he also puts timestamps, so it's not like you have to watch the whole thing. But yeah, that is the end of the video. I got more summaries that are on the come up. And I'm also thinking of doing like an ask me anything. So if you got some questions that you'd like to ask me, just leave it in the comments on this video. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.